She didn't record that.
Okay, well, we have our steering committee members that are going to attend this evening here. We're missing Ann Campbell, who's the chair of the Settlement Agreement and Policy Subcommittee, who will be the other chair of the subcommittee, but we can get this meeting started. And we can just start with introductions briefly, and I'm just jumping in here just so we can move it along. I know we're 12 minutes in, and we've talked about a lot of stuff from swamps to Florida, to gators, to lots of different things. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce myself, and then I'll call on somebody, and then we'll just keep that going. My name is Theo Lara. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a PCCEP staff member, and I'm happy to be here. Byron, will you introduce yourself?
Thank you, Theo. Good night. Good evening, everyone. My name is Byron Vaughn, PCCEP member and Behavioral Subcommittee member. Gloria.
Hello, Byron and everybody.
Hey, everybody.
My name is Gloria Canson. I use she, her pronouns, and just wanted to let everybody know it's good to see you again. And Amy.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Amy Anderson here, Chair of the Behavioral Health Subcommittee. Oh, are we passing it around?
Yes, ma'am.
Let's go to Barb.
Okay, let's go to Barb. Barb is here, community member, PCCEP groupie, and Behavioral Health Subcommittee member, and Amy's peer and right hand. She, her pronouns. And Barb's gonna go to Tia.
Hello, my name is Tia, and my pronouns are she, her. I'm a member of the PCCEP Behavioral Health Subcommittee. Thank you. Judith, pass it on to you.
Thank you, Tia. My name's Judith Mowry. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from the Office of Equity and Human Rights. My day job, I'm the Senior Policy Advisor, and I have the pleasure of spending some of my time supporting the PCCEP staff and hanging out with all of you. And I will pass it to Vamshi.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you again. Vamshi Reddy, she, her pronouns with the City Attorney's Office. And I will pass it to, has Ashley Wagner gone yet? I'll pass it to Ashley.
She might have stepped away.
Sure. So how about let's pass it to Jared. Have you gone?
I haven't. My name is Jared Hager. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm with the United States Department of Justice. I'm here in my role as the monitor of a settlement agreement between the United States and the city of Portland. I appreciate you having me here. I will pass it to Anika.
Hi, good evening. Anika Bent-Albert, Deputy City Attorney, she, her pronouns. Good evening, everyone. I'll pass it to Sarah Ames.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ames, she, her pronouns, also with the City Attorney's Office, and I am working on helping the city get into compliance with the Department of Justice Settlement Agreement, and one of my chosen activities is to help support Anika in working with PCCEP. And I will pass it to, well, try Ashley again. Ashley? Nat, how about Ryan's iPhone? Is Ryan there? Okay. Let's see. Gloria, have you gone yet?
You know, I have, but I didn't say I was the chair of the youth subcommittee.
That's right. All right. Celeste, we got you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
So,
God, I'm so bad at this. You know, it's like one of those memory games where you have to remember, like, you know, which one you flipped over and where is that elephant when you find the matching
Yes.
card. And I was
oh
always
yeah,
terrible at that.
concentration,
I would
or
lose to
maybe
my
this is
kids
more like
all the
Hollywood
time,
Squares. I
so.
don't know.
And they say this time is a charm.
Mary
Well,
Claire.
here
Oh my
you go.
God, I know I've lost already. Mary Claire.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't gone yet, so you're good.
So
Celeste Carey, care of the chair of the Racial Equity Subcommittee, female pronouns, and let's see. I think that only leaves Mary Claire. Is that correct?
and Claudia.
Oh, and Claudia. I'm sorry.
Yeah, last but not least, right, Claudia? Mary Claire Buckley, Portland Police Bureau. Claudia? Your turn.
I'm here, sorry. No problem. One second. My computer's acting funny, but hi everyone. My name is Claudia. I am the project assistant for PCCEP.
Oh, although I just did it on camera, so that was really fun.
Sorry. Thank you guys. I'm gonna mute real quick.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. And Claudia put it in the chat earlier, but there's the agenda again, just so we can all roll through this together. And I'm not really, we can split the facilitation however you all want. We can just kind of play it by ear. But the first thing on the agenda, as you can see, is discuss steering committee next steps. And the first thing to discuss is the foundation. As you know, I presented a document earlier on, I guess last month now, that the majority of you have seen. That was just something that it could be in terms of the steering committee.
I
haven't seen it either.
It was sent to the PCCEP distribution list, but I can either put it in the chat or we can just talk about what you all envision as the foundation, as the 4 subcommittee chairs comprising the steering committee. Because it's really in service of what you all want. This is the committee to enhance and elevate the voice of the community, and you all as community members and volunteers, you're appointed to help enhance that voice.
Okay, Theo,
Yeah.
if I may, since I'm not really sure how to rotate this, all I want to mention is that I feel it's kind of really important that we first determine how many town halls we have to have, how many quarterly events we have to have. Like, I really think we should have, you know, that calendar timeline of the mandatory things we have to do in what months, you know, we have to do them in. That way we can always be ahead and know kind of maybe 6 months in advance that we're going to have to set aside time for a review of this document, a review of that document. You know what I mean? Like, we still don't have a clear I don't have a clear directed timeline of when these events must occur. And if they don't have a timeline, then that's even better. But we all need to know that it needs to be done like what, once a quarter, once a year, you know, that type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great idea. And I think this committee, this subcommittee, as the steering committee, you all get to decide what that calendar looks like in collaboration with your PCCEP peers. But that would really help us. So in 2019 and 2020, the PCCEP started taking on a lot of other things, right? And because nobody wanted to say, don't do this, because it was really important stuff that the PCCEP was taking on, we kind of just like added new meetings kind of willy-nilly, like all the time. Listening sessions all the time, town halls all the time. The mayor kind of announced that he was doing the corporate trust services and asking PCCEP to look at it, and then PCCEP found out about it later. Right?
Yeah.
So there was lots of things kind of thrust at PCCEP. So I am in complete agreement. I think it's a great idea to really get organized as an entity and calendar that out. So if the steering committee wanted to have like a work session and calendar out the year, I think that's time well invested. I think that'd be great.
Okay, and then while we're at it, like during our regular big meetings, we've been having like, a certain order to the events, like welcome, introductions, and all those things. But I really think that if we as a steering committee are kind of like gonna bring forward our ideas and what we want to bring to the big meeting, then we need to replace the subcommittee report outs with subcommittee like report-ins is what I call it. What are we bringing to the table? What does each subcommittee want to bring forward to the larger group? And make that kind of a monthly event at the same time on the agenda. You know what I mean? We can just pretty much forecast our agendas except for guest speakers. And that way we'll be ready, and we can launch them. Does that make sense to everyone?
Kind of, to me.
I'm trying to lay out a permanent agenda so we only have to fill in a few boxes at a time.
Okay, so it's been kind of the template, the boilerplate to have those subcommittees report back for a number of months at the beginning of the meeting. So would that change? Are you saying
yes,
that would change?
And instead of a report out, we're going to come forward with either recommendations from our subcommittee or ideas that the subcommittee, is working on. Because I thought the goal of this meeting was so we can organize what the subcommittees are actually doing and then either do voting on their recommendations. What if there's recommendations the subcommittee has that needs voting time? You know what I mean? We're going to have to kind of play around with what does everybody want. Like, here's an example. Last night at the Behavioral Health Subcommittee, Barb and we kind of put out to the group about bringing forward a recommendation that we PCCEP support the wellness plan that's currently the wellness plan directive that's currently in motion. Let me say it like that. Okay. But then Gloria didn't know that there was certain things within the document, and it caused like a hiccup in the conversation because we were all thinking, well, yeah, that makes sense. Well, if there's no, way to review it, why are we voting on something that we have no outcomes for? And that totally changed with the reading of the material. So that's the kind of thing I was thinking about, that we could make use of our I call it master meeting time, is that sometimes we need votes of the larger body. Okay. And I would like to do it during a select time. So each subcommittee gets a certain amount of time based upon their needs. That's the way I think. And we can do that here. We can learn about what do people need for time. Is there any special things they want to bring forward? And we can move that work here in the steering committee area. Does that make sense to everyone, what I'm saying?
Oh.
Go ahead, Gloria.
Theo, I just wanted to add a little clarification for Amy's comment. My concern was that without a matrix, without a measurement of some sort for the behavioral program or directive program, how will we know what it is that we're voting on?
Did you read the directives?
I did.
Right.
I went through them.
Great. Well, I'm really glad to know that
But there is no measurement.
Well, I thought Theo read last night what the measurement was.
No, Leo read
Leo, sorry.
Did you apprise us of a matrix, a measurement?
Not Theo,
Outcome?
Leo.
Leo, no, he didn't.
No, I don't. I read through the directive as well. I didn't see.
There is none. And
yeah.
he said that.
out directly what the measurements were going to be.
That's right. He didn't know.
But
so we can vote saying that we agree whatever the measurement is, even if there are no measurements that
no,
we
can't
support.
now.
Well, so the the process of the PCEP is the subcommittees can bring forward a recommendation, but the recommendation doesn't automatically have to pass, right? So any PCEP member can raise concerns, can say there's nothing, we don't have metrics, we don't have a matrix to vote on, and recommendations get voted down oftentimes, but it's good to have these discussions to work in a collaborative way, to have people like Leo at these meetings and say, hey, we'd like to talk more about this. What can we do about having a matrix? Is there anything that we can do to work in collaboration with you? So later on down the road, then that could be a thing, but that's not a recommendation. That's working in collaboration with PPP. I know that we have other members. Celeste, Tia, do you have anything to say? Byron also? Go ahead, Tia.
I'm taking notes. It's going super fast for me. But I agree that the steering committee should be the place where we come together to make, to provide solutions. And when Amy was talking about the bringing the subcommittees forward, is my first thought was who's in charge of the steering committee, where we could bring what we want at the, I mean, is it only a team, or is there a chair of the steering committee? Or is everyone the same level? Like who would, if the steering committee wanted the behavioral health subcommittee to let them know how many minutes we needed to talk about a goal we have and need to vote on it. I get, okay, so now I'm confused on when we vote on ways we want to go as a committee. Is it a PCEP committee, a behavioral health subcommittee?
Yes.
Or
It
is
would be, if it needed a vote, Tia, it would go to the full PCEP board. Typically, my understanding is we don't have to vote on anything in the subcommittee. We just agree or kind of disagree. I'm not looking for voting in or voting out here. It's more at the full committee if it's something that everyone needs to participate in and we need comment or we need, interaction. That was my thinking. But I was under the impression that there's no votes needed within the subcommittee for anything we want to do. That's why we're talking about it here at the steering committee meeting, so I can get everybody's thoughts. And then we go around and each chair will get their turn. Like, I'm done. I'm willing to pass it on now and let another chair talk about their thoughts around foundational ideas for developing future meetings, both here and the big meetings. Because I think we can do both at the same time if we do this right.
so voting only happens at full board meetings?
That's the PCEP vote for recommendations, and per the PCEP plan, actually, like reading through it, technically to produce a recommendation, the PCEP doesn't even need to vote on it.
Right.
But I guess that's neither here nor there. But each subcommittee can have their own set of guidelines, really. And I know that previously the SPMI subcommittee, they had votes lots of times to even as like a measure of forwarding recommendations on. So they wanted to vote on their recommendations as a unit before it was even produced to the PCEP as a whole. And then other subcommittees have done that in the past as well. The Racial Equity Subcommittee has done that in the past. So subcommittees can vote if they want, but the PCEP, their vote is usually for recommendations.
Okay.
And I know that Judith, sure. And to answer your previous question, when we were discussing it, we didn't envision there being chairs or like co-chairs or any roles. We envisioned the chairs of the subcommittee working collaboratively as a unit in the steering committee to push the work forward. Judith, did you want to say something? Your comment is you spoke about collaboration. What was that?
Yeah, so just to add, I think we've got a couple different conversations going simultaneously. The first question was sort of how the question you asked, Tia, was how is this going to operate? Do we have a chair? I think the goal was for folks to work collaboratively. That could look like passing around the facilitation from meeting to meeting. But I think the idea is to try to not have a hierarchical structure, but try to have it so that everyone can have a voice in this, which I know is really possible. We're not necessarily trained on collaboration in our culture, but I feel like, you know, you all can be good at working with others. And so, so the first question, and then there's the question of what is the role of the steering committee? My experience has been that the steering committees have had autonomy around deciding, do we vote on things or not? It is in the PCCEP plan that no one, or the bylaws, that no one other, I think it's bylaws, no one other than PCCEP members can vote in subcommittees. But that I think people do kind of take the temperature, figure out what it is going on. But I think the thought around the steering committee was that the 4 members could work together to be the facilitators for that, and that the steering committee is the place that builds the agendas. And Amy, I wanted to say for you, I prepared, and I'm trying to find it on my computer. My work computer won't let me connect to my files at work, but that listed out all the required meetings that y'all are supposed to have according to the old PCCEP plan. And so I will get that to you as soon as I can find it. And it was the ones that were quarterly, the ones that were, you know, yearly, when reports were due. So I have that document. I think we've provided it, Theo and Claudia, to every steering committee that there has been. And we would love it if we were all on the same page about meeting our obligations under the plan.
Yes,
So
that is wonderful. Thank you, Judith. Since we're
Absolutely.
all
So we
kinda
have
new at
it and
this,
we'll get it
should
to
be
you.
easier. Yes.
And then I think it is, you know, that the one of the things that kind of happened in the past, and calendar invites, we could give you Outlook invites to meetings, you know, for members, and if people, you know, ask for it, and absolutely, Sarah, I'll make sure you get it as well. But we want to make sure, you know, that's great. That's fantastic. And so maybe the thing you can do is pass around the, you know, I think it's great. You have a basic framework, and then subcommittees can bring things and say, we've been discussing this. We have a recommendation we want to bring forward to the meeting. And it's just about putting it on the agenda. Absolutely, Gloria. And I'll make sure everybody has it. And I'm sorry that it's just not handy. My work computer is really shot and needs a new one.
Yeah, and I
So
can.
I hope that's helpful.
And I can see if I can pull it up as well, and then I can send it. But the last thing that I'm going to say about the foundational aspect of the steering committee is that it's the subcommittee chairs. It's supposed to be representative, and you're supposed to and it works that way. Because the subcommittees are really intended to serve and elevate the voices of these communities that have been traditionally oppressed, right? So you have youth, you have the racial equity one, you have the behavioral health one, and you have the settlement agreement one, which isn't obviously a group that's traditionally oppressed, but it's an important piece of this group. So these 4 subcommittees, and you all as representatives of those subcommittees, sorry, I didn't mean to stop my video, are on the steering committee. Specifically, so none of these groups are forgotten in the meetings, in the general meetings, and in the work of PCCEP. It happens sometimes, and we want to try to limit that happening, right? So we want everybody to have an equitable representation on the steering committee, and then in the general committee.
Good.
Do folks feel good about that, about where that is?
I do. Piggybacking on what you just said, Theo, I think it would be really beneficial, and it sends a really strong statement of collaboration if we rotate being chairs. And it makes all the members of the individual committees feel like their committee has a significant role and representation. So, you know, I know that means it might be additional work for me. And like everybody, I'm sure I'm barely treading water with work. But I feel energized in knowing that, you know, I'm doing more to represent my subcommittee, and that people feel that there is some immediacy and access to getting their specific committee concerns brought to a more prominent platform by me being the chair for that particular meeting. Does that make sense, everyone?
Yes, for me.
Okay, so you know, I'm trying not too subtly, I see, to be a cheerleader and, you know, kind of excite everybody about the prospect of taking on that work.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, Celeste, and I appreciate those words. I wonder, the first part you said was the chair part, and I want to talk more about that just because I think that there's obviously a difference between somebody who's chairing a meeting and somebody who's facilitating a meeting. And I think if we did away with chairs, then I think the rotation of facilitation
Perfect. Yes.
is great. That would be ideal. And that would also help folks get experience in facilitating. I know this isn't a job course or training or anything like that.
Yes.
But if folks want to facilitate meetings, I think that's something that you all should take turns doing, or even in the past, Taji and Elliot, or Lakeisha and Lakiana, or however it was, they divided up the meetings between chair and co-chair. And you have 4 people, so you could divide it up 4 times, assuming that everybody was at the meeting. Yes, Barb, I think that's right. Facilitator training, we can make facilitator trainings available to those who want it, and we can pay for those with our budget. I see Sarah smiling, and I promise you we have the funds to do it. Don't worry. Amy, go ahead.
Yeah, what just came to me about all this is that this is where I tie it back to what the subcommittees want to bring forward, you know, to that particular meeting, is that they should be the ones facilitating their passion. That's the way I believe. I wouldn't want someone facilitating something I wanted to be passionate about. Okay. So if we can maybe try that, and maybe it'll reduce the whose turn is it? You know, we need to look at what is really important that we need to bring forward now, and who is the best person to speak about it. You know, and that's where I've always been. I've never really liked chair, co-chair, secretary thing. Me, I'm always wanting community collaboration and bringing forward the best voice for the message. And maybe that way we can increase our power by having, you know, the person speaking for their subcommittee at a time during the big meeting, and then they facilitate the whole meeting. Does that make sense to everyone? What do you guys think?
I agree. I like that.
And Amy, it would.
Oh, you got muted.
Sorry, I think the thing to remember is when you are the person who's bringing the thing forward and they're the subject matter expert, facilitating is a whole other job than presenting what you are getting people to think about.
Yeah.
So in my mind, and I facilitated for decades, is facilitation is about making sure that, you know, you're staying within the reasonable time so you meet your expectations for the meeting. You're making sure you can call on people. If things get a little messy, you're adding some clarification, which might be you're summarizing things. So sometimes actually being the presenter is the time not to be the facilitator. But hopefully, if a subcommittee brings something forward, it shouldn't get kiboshed by the steering committee unless it's a really unusual circumstance. The subcommittee's work should be respected, and it should be a matter of just putting it on the agenda, and then the subcommittee chair being able to, you know, announce it and give all the presentation at the meeting. So that's just a thing to think about facilitating. Yeah.
Good point. I'm glad you clarified. I just trying to figure out how does everyone get to be, covered and feel comfortable, and how do we rotate, where everybody feels included. And that's something we all do differently. So this is
And I
going to be
think,
interesting.
well, it is, and I think that I really have high faith in all of you to be able to do this well. I think that one of the reasons that we supported thinking about doing it this way, and I'll be very frank, is we've had issues in the past with people feeling like when people had titles of chair, co-chair, all those things, that there began to be a separation in power, in access to meetings, and that didn't work for the other members. And Claudia and Theo and I have had very frank conversations with people sometimes saying other members are feeling disengaged. They're feeling like it's all about you. There were meetings happening with, the chief of police or the mayor. There's no reason in our mind that everyone can't be included in those meetings if they want to be. So, it's a matter of trying to kind of balance the power out. Also, the subcommittees, there may be circumstances, say a community member comes or something happens. And and so that would be another thing, the steering committee. But I don't think things should go to a vote without it being at a level where the community has the opportunity to give real feedback. And there were things going to the steering committee and going right to be voted on at the general meeting without any meeting with, the public. And so we are trying to encourage a format that will hold to the values of what we understand PCCEP to be about.
And just expanding on Judith's point just a little bit, if I can, sometimes it won't happen all the time, but sometimes there are meetings where the full committee can't attend for whatever reason. So you all, as the steering committee, as 4 representatives of your respective subcommittees, you get to be there, and there's equitable representation from each of the subcommittees. So you can all report back to your subcommittees about what happened during this meeting. And it's not just going to be folks who from this committee or that committee or whatever. So there's more equitable representation.
You send a proxy.
In terms of that. So has anybody not spoken who wants to speak?
I have another question. So who creates the goals for each subcommittee? The steering, is that done within each subcommittee? And the steering committee is not laying out the goals for each subcommittee?
Correct. That's done within each subcommittee.
Good.
Okay.
Do any of our city folks hear anything that we're missing? We don't pretend to have all the answers. Barb, go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I didn't realize my hand was up. I have so many freaking things to say. One of which is, how in the world do you include community members who want to have access to materials that are clearly public that you guys are going to talk about at future meetings? How does that get disseminated? I can disseminate it within, the little behavioral health group if needed. And I think Claudia actually has a little subgroup for us. But as far as stuff that gets sent to the whole PCCEP, it does not get sent to me. And I'm not saying everything should be sent to me, but a lot of it would be really, really, really helpful. And so that's one thing. Another thing is, since you guys are discussing process and Judith brought it up, I am once again going to object to the idea that you have subcommittees that if you want to include the community in, it makes no sense to have a voting process where PCEP members' votes count. And some of these committees, no offense to any of them that are small, and ours just grew a lot. So I've been saying this, small or large. Some of these committees have 1 or 2 PCEP members on them. So that just makes no sense to me as far as process goes in terms of voting. But in terms of individual subcommittees deciding how to take care of themselves and everyone not having to do that, that would be a solution in my mind. And, you know, I feel like I do have a good community voice, but that just, it's unwelcoming.
Theo, do you understand the reference?
No, what was the reference?
Okay, the reference is the piece in the PCEP plan or the bylaws that states that only registered PCEP members can vote within the subcommittees.
Oh, yeah, no, I got that.
Okay.
That's the part we're trying to change, because that's why we're not voting, because the public can't vote within the subcommittee according to the way it's written. So we
Yeah.
got to fix that.
I think I would tend to agree. I think that should be for each subcommittee to decide how that proceeds. I have no issue with that. I think in like broad strokes, it's never wise to like find something that you don't like in bylaws and then always change it, right? Judith and I talked about this a few times. Like, if people find something in bylaws, they don't like it, let's change it. But this is something that should be changed. This is something that's different. This is something that's cumbersome, and it's not inclusive of community, right? So to Barb's earlier point about information, the PCEP isn't guardians of information, right? We're the vessels, or the PCEP is supposed to be the vessels of communicating that information and then uplifting the voice of the community. So I think bylaw revisions are helpful in these cases. Obviously, they have to go through a couple of different channels, but I think subcommittees know their subcommittees best. I can hear you, Bob. You're on mute.
So I voted a couple of separate different things, right? So the voting in the subcommittee was one of them, and that's just been addressed. This big email list, Judith, I'm on an email list. I get, Claudia, I'm sure can speak to it. Yep, Claudia's there. Best.
No, yeah, I can, you get the emails that we have 400 folks on. So those emails are the ones with the updates and the meeting notices.
Do you get what I'm talking about though?
With the materials?
In the official PCEP peoples. And then maybe, you know, I'm sure you have like a little bit of a wider nest where you include the city and the DOJ and all the official whatever. But repeatedly stuff comes up, it's on the agenda. I realize I'm going to bring up another thought, right? That the idea is to change the process, right? So that the PCEP isn't making a decision and then listening to the public comment and then voting, right? But that has happened so many times in the past, but the public comment, the people don't have easy access or to some of the documents that are being discussed. And that is just not community input or engagement. And if you're trying to squelch it, good job. And I'm being sarcastic because I really, really think that that's not how this group wants to move forward. So I totally appreciate that my voice gets heard. I've asked for stuff about like trainings and, you know, supplementary city sort of things. And maybe there's more lists I should be signing up for, but whatever, I think those are sort of just 3 separate issues there.
I guess it boils down to the privacy of our city email accounts. What has to remain private between us as PCEP members and what can be public. That's really where some of the lines are not drawn out clearly, because some emails look to me to be community-based and some look to be, you know, like has to stay within PCEP, because I remember when we got these emails, there was a reason for it. Okay, so we could send emails through and provide one another with important information. But then it became a chat line and everybody sent everything through, and it was really hard to decipher what should go forward and what should stay. So this is a good foundation element for us to decide, or if there is rules already, Judith, I'm not sure I remember anymore, what has to remain under the city email guidelines and what can go forward.
Amy, that's a great part. And Barb, I really appreciate what you're saying. The goal has been to post the materials for the meetings 2 weeks before any meeting. And that has gotten very hard to do. Sometimes it's hard for us to do because the subcommittees aren't ready with their materials with the effect. What we are hoping is that we can let people know, add the links, right? And be able to, they can see that the meeting's coming, they look at the agenda, and there's the materials that will support it. And I agree, it's really important. People need time to study things, and Dan Handelman objects to this all the time. So I think that's super important, and we would like to all work together on that. Amy, I just want to remind you that everything you should do your business. You are city officials as members
Exactly.
of the PCEP.
Exactly.
And the business of the PCEP should be public as much as possible. We have sort of this carve out for retreats when we're trying to kind of get our personal stuff together. But you are a committee of the public, and anything that goes on through the emails, it can be requested as public record. And we did have to try to keep people from deliberating on the emails, because the deliberation should happen in public again, right? So I agree completely. We want to do a good job of getting information out to people for sure. And we want to make sure that that we're, so we'd love to work with you all on making that reaching that goal. And I did just want to say, in the very early days on the PCEP list, we included the city attorneys that worked with us. We included Mary Claire, we included Jared. That kind of sense of working collectively, we all have different roles, but that is something that I think would be helpful for us. I feel like we've kind of gotten into a little bit of an us and them, and we don't need it, right?
Right, we have to be whole.
Successful. And we each have a role to play, and that's what I think that, and I just have to say, especially this time in the world, I mean, we can reach out and reach for the goal of showing how we can all work together toward bettering our community. So thank you. Sorry for the little soapbox.
It was good. More to think about.
Also, the more CCs on an email is a less likelihood of something getting missed. Back in the day when folks would CC everybody that is on this call, right? So the city attorneys, the DOJ, Mary Claire. Mary Claire is our liaison for PPP. And then we sometimes have a liaison for the mayor's office. And then Jared always shows up for the meetings. And then the city attorney back in the day was Tracy. And they always had good insight for PCEP members when PCEP members asked for it. So if we could get to that place of collaboration, then I think it would serve the community well. Anyway, we have just about 5 minutes of this part of the agenda. Is there anything that we missed? Any lasting things that are on people's minds?
Tia has a hard stop at 7, so I'm wondering, Tia, if you have any thoughts you want to share before you have to go.
Yeah, yes. I'm just hoping that in all of our agendas and goals that we're doing community engaged policing. And sometimes I feel like we're off track by not doing the community engaged part. And I just kept feeling like we are here to be a bridge between building trust within the police and the community. And I'm hoping to continue to do that work.
Well, you will. Thank you. And
Thank
if you
you.
think of anything important, write it down, let us know. We'll collaborate on it. Everybody's voice is important. So feel free to write it and share it if you wish. But yeah, these are the elements of how I wanted to build like the next big meeting's agenda, was to kind of get everybody's thoughts about what do we want to bring forward? What do we want to talk about? Maybe we should just introduce our new process at this upcoming meeting, because folks don't know we changed. Not everybody knows what our new process is going to look like. You know what I mean? During the big meeting event. So we need to kind of preface a section about the change and the why. Why we're doing it this way, in hopes of getting more collaboration with everybody and participation, and just kind of lay the framework of where we're going as a new grouping. I'll say groupies. And I also saw an email from Zainab and I think Celeste about doing a moment for Chief Moose. And I absolutely love that idea. He was a powerful man on his way to do miracles in Portland. And Zainab wrote something and sent it through our, the PCCEP emails, and it was really beautiful. But she's not here tonight, so I don't know whether she wants the whole thing read or parts of it, but it was awesome. So I just want to bring forward the message that she was hoping we could do like a memorial moment like we used to do at the beginning of the meetings, for folks, and do one for Chief Moose. What does everyone think? Yeah. Theo, did you get a chance to read what she wrote?
Yep, I think that's great. I think the PCCEP has made those kinds of gestures before, and I think it's always good to acknowledge somebody with a profound effect on Portland.
Celeste, did you know him? Did you work with him? Oh, is she offline?
I think so.
Scared her away.
I believe that she did
What?
work with Chief Moose.
Yeah, because I was wondering if Zainab was going to be at our meeting, or if Celeste would like to. I don't know if they planned on reading it or just presenting it. I wasn't quite sure.
Well,
So
either way, you all can put that on the agenda for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I feel, yeah, that's just my opinion, but I think it's important to honor, the man. He was really awesome. I was actually living here when he became chief. So yeah, it was
chief when I moved here.
Yep. Okay. So, next on our agenda tonight is called job duties. So I wasn't quite sure what you were referencing on that. Can you kind of help me, Theo? Whose job duties, yours or ours?
No, I think that's kind of been answered after the discussion about chairs and co-chairs, and how there won't be chairs and co-chairs, and how the committee will split the facilitation. I think right now what we need to do is just build the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to hopefully do, is get some idea forward, backward.
Okay, so your first point, or maybe it wasn't your first, but you asked that, or you suggested that the subcommittee reports be changed. So for this next meeting for the December general meeting, did you not want to see subcommittee reports? Is that what you're saying, Amy?
Well, I haven't heard from everyone as to what is important to them to bring forward. I don't know. I'm waiting to hear from the other subcommittees chairs to see what they were envisioning happening on this agenda from their subcommittee. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so on the boilerplate, on the template of the
Yeah.
of that, we still have written in at the first part subcommittee reports, and then youth, and then it goes so on and so forth.
I guess I just want to leave out the word reports because we're not really necessarily presenting a report. We're going to have a discussion. Okay, so you could say behavioral health subcommittee, racial equity subcommittee, you know, and list the chair and list the members if you want. Just giving more credence to the people who work on this stuff. The biggest way we can do that publicly is on paper. And so if we really want to be inclusive, we need to get everybody's name right, who's on that committee, who's doing the work on that committee. Even if it's only 3 or 4 people, then they get recognized publicly. And I think it's important as a collaboration effect. It kind of removes the chair piece even further, you know what I mean, as a presentation.
Byron, go ahead.
It was 2 questions. Once we have all our recommendations and everybody agree on them, what are we doing after the fact of these recommendations being implemented and being followed through?
Follow up.
I think we need a lot more time to meet, and just instead of once a month, or and then if we don't have enough community input, I think me and Barb, you know, are wily cats enough to figure out, you know, hey, this can work for us if we put it towards each other, if we implement this. You know, sometimes if we don't have public testimony, hey, we got to move forward. We got to keep going. We don't have time to be waiting on them right now. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration to a certain extent. Just more time, making sure everybody's clear on everything. And I'm great on all the rules, man. Hearing everybody talking about how we're going to get all this done, man. But my main concern is, man, are y'all putting these rules down and are you implementing them? And I need to see some results from them.
Well,
I appreciate that, Byron. Gloria and Celeste, what do you have anything to say in terms of trying to build the agenda for this month?
Yes, we do have a report coming from the youth committee. We're trying to establish a youth forum. We have a date, at least 2 tentative dates. And we put a lot of work into it, getting a list of people that we need to contact and making sure that everyone has a duty. And there are, like I say, there are like 8 of us or 9 of us on the committee, and each person has their duties. So we're going to report back, in our next meeting. It's going to be on the 10th of January. So we should be able to make a pretty good report at the full board.
okay, so you
Awesome. Thank you, Gloria. So I guess I'm trying to figure out if the steering committee is in favor of trying to of amending the agenda template to change the word report. Would you just rather have updates, subcommittee updates?
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Because sometimes things are a discussion and sometimes things are presented, you know, in chat, and that just confuses everybody with our language. So the simpler we can keep it, the better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shouldn't a report be brought to everybody, not an update? An update is letting everybody know what's going on, but a report, it should be brought to a meeting that we're doing right now. If we're going to use, if we're trying to make sure we're using the right term.
Well, you know, in terms of what the committees are doing, I think an update would be appropriate and especially if you're just saying we did this. But I think if we're bringing a recommendation, then maybe something closer to a report so that people can understand the context of the recommendation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because the report is going to give you everything that you need to know.
Well, but we're not, I mean, the report will be in our minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good idea, but I'm also kind of trying to cut down on work so, we concentrate it. So, yeah.
I wish people would reach out to me if you need extra help. I mean, I'm here at home. I don't get no phone calls or anything. Anybody need any assistance on anything. So, I mean, don't be shy. Don't let this look fool you or scare you off.
Be careful what you ask for. I got you.
Barb, go ahead.
I think you guys are really close to understanding like what you need to do. But can I suggest just thinking about it in terms of equity for the committees? So sometimes some subcommittee is gonna have a report some months. I think I'm understanding that the youth subcommittee wants to say, this is our plan for a while, unless I'm missing something, or to report on something else, doesn't really matter. But say, one of the other subcommittees doesn't have much to say. So the way the agenda should be constructed is to give, or another subcommittee might have a recommendation to present and ask for a vote on, right? So instead of just having a list of between 5 and 10 groups that get 3 minutes each, which is really, really, really random and esoteric and doesn't really happen anyway, give time for what the subcommittees need, and that could be certainly decided here easily. And then, geez, we always want to hear from the city and the police, right?
Excellent idea. Yeah, so maybe during the steering committee, we set aside, okay, say the behavioral health subcommittee is bringing forth a recommendation, I need 15 minutes. And then we would go to like Celeste and I would say, okay, Celeste, what do you think your subcommittee needs time for? What would you like to do this month for your subcommittee at this big meeting?
And I'm assuming the big meeting you're referring to is the general meeting?
Yeah, I just called the big meeting. That's my language. Yeah, the general meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get the words
Yeah.
right. But yeah.
And if I don't have anything to report that's significant or requires public notification, or I don't have any action items, I can cede my time.
Exactly. See, this is what I'm trying to get across, is we can all look at the work we're trying to get across to the community and determine, man, someone else needs that time. So I'm going to, to like step back and give that, like, you, Gloria, you have an incredible laid out plan of action to develop a town hall or a conversation. That is really important, and not so much about how you're doing it, about as much as what you want to do. And that's where, I would give you more time to talk about that at the general meeting. You see what I mean? That's what I'm envisioning.
So I just want to note that it's a 3-hour meeting. So there's usually ample time, and the subcommittee reports or updates never take very long. And it's good for consistency, right? So we've talked about consistency a lot. So at the beginning of the PCCEP meetings, there's been the subcommittee reports, updates, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes subcommittees have said, we didn't meet, we canceled our meeting. And then they go on, and it takes 30 seconds. And then you have Mary Claire or somebody with PPP give their update, and then the mayor's office gives their update. And that's the consistency part. And then later on in the meeting, if there's a recommendation, then there's always going to be time for that subcommittee to present their recommendation, to hear from community, then to vote on it later, or to not vote on it, depending on if they need more information or what have you. So I think we can kind of move forward. It sounds like we're a little bit trying to reinvent the wheel, maybe where it doesn't need to be reinvented. So I think we can probably just keep that and then try to go on to the latter parts of the general body meeting. But if that's not the case, then we can keep talking about it. But I did want to note also that Anne, who's the other steering committee member, did ask for time specifically for to discuss the previous PCCEP recommendation on body-worn cameras, and then to try to revamp that. I can read the full email if you all want, but it's whatever you guys want.
A question I have is sorry.
Sorry, guys. When you were talking, Theo, about the report outs or the reports, updates, whatever, you listed a whole lot of other groups that my brain just now, flashed on. Can we just do can we put bullet points of each of those every group that would be maybe potentially on the timeline to present? I guess that's what, I mean, are we going to expect people to present from the other government departments the same way we have report outs or not? Like, I'm trying to get an understanding of what all people want to report on.
Yes.
Other than what we're doing.
Yes, and they do. They have at the meetings, the PPB gives their updates right after the PCCEP, and then the mayor's office, then PCCEP staff. And there's a bullet point on the agendas of that going in that order of the different subcommittees, and then PPB, mayor's staff, and then PCCEP. Okay,
well, here's another idea that just flashed. How about we use that time for them to respond back to our previous recommendations? Like, where are the recommendations in the timeline, of when we put them out there? Are they at the mayor's waiting to be signed? I mean, what some of the folks in Taji and Lakiana were trying to get away from was that rubber stamping information and not getting continuity back on what was happening on the other end, right? We were just giving information out, but not much was coming back about the connection between what we're, like Byron is saying, where's the, reconciliation for what we're already put in motion?
I want to just throw out yeah, I hear you, Amy. I want to throw out a time check because there's only 15 minutes to the meeting, and there's been some good suggestions in the chat. What about if the meeting, you start the meeting, you welcome people, then you have the report, each of the, groups to have their time, and sometimes they can use as much time as they need to, right? But I do think if a subcommittee is bringing forward a recommendation, it shouldn't happen during that period. I think then the action items should come after that, and any recommendation should be an action item. So if there's something that you want passed, you put that out, then there's the discussion. And I just want to really appreciate what Barb said about having the community give their feedback before sometimes the way it's worked often is the PCCEP discusses and kind of comes to a conclusion, it seems like, and then they hear from the community. The community should influence your conclusions. They're there to do that. So then you have your action items, and those would be like for this meeting. Well, I'm hearing a suggestion that the letter that was written about Charles Moose by Zanab is read either at the beginning of the meeting during the time when we've had those reflections for those lost. And maybe if Zanab's not going to be there, maybe Celeste, you're willing to read it, or a staff person can read it. And then you'd have your subcommittee. It's like a check-in, subcommittee check-in, and the check-ins that, if anything, that the DOJ might have, or that Mary Claire might have for the mayor's office if they send someone. Hopefully they will. And then there's the
Because enough people didn't jump on the bandwagon. And
One of the action items is one of the action items is what Anne wants to bring forward, which is a review of the body worn camera recommendation that was made last year. What else is needed in terms of, and then I'm hearing a review of this new steering committee structure.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that's out there that needs to be discussed at this meeting?
Yeah, the COCOL brought up an idea to PCCEP members that that PCCEP members or PCCEP facilitate a town hall to discuss body worn cameras, or a listening session to discuss body worn cameras. So that could be integrated into the discussion before, but it would be good to have more of a discussion about if PCCEP thought it was useful to host a town hall specifically on body worn cameras for the community. So that could be another thing that goes on the agenda. What do you all think?
I think that's wonderful. That'll be a bullet point under our recommendations section, that we support, you know, the gathering of this information session. I support it. Because they've worked out well. We've gotten good attendance on some. And if we hold it on a Sunday night, we may have 700 people like last time. I don't know. That one was pretty big. It was a pretty big topic.
And all the indications are that this is going to happen, right? So the body worn cameras thing, it's going to happen whether, like, no matter who likes it or doesn't like it. But the important thing is to hear from the community about when this happens, what can they change, and what once they know what can they change, what can they talk about, then what are going to be the best processes moving forward for community members and for the city to hear from community and to.
Oh, and one more thing, Theo.
Wait, Amy,
sorry.
just Gloria's had her hand up for quite a while, and so Gloria and Celeste, and then
real quick, and then she can have the floor. That Jared read the new document requirements around body worn cameras that came across the judge. That's all I'm saying, is that information be included.
Go ahead, Gloria.
Okay. I just wanted to say, Sarah made a suggestion about the report out for the committees, and I found it very helpful. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, I found it very helpful where she said, just have an action plan when you come up to report. And I think action items with little bullets would help me a lot. So I like that. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Celeste, go ahead.
In addition to that, one of the things I had mentioned, and I've thought about it a little bit more, is if we do have recommendations or action items, it would be helpful for us to get them posted, you know, to either you or Claudia before the meeting, at the very least 24 hours before the meeting, so that the steering committee members are familiar with it, because we don't want to blindside each other, and especially if we're trying to get consensus among each other. So I'm thinking, for example, if we have something that comes out of our next meeting and I want an action item, I need to get it to Claudia as soon as possible after that meeting, so it can be sent out to people and they can have adequate time. Because I think nothing causes us to lose credibility than we're not communicating amongst the group and we don't have a grasp of whatever the recommendation is coming from one of the subcommittees.
That's great. I'm really glad you mentioned that. And it's also a practice. It hasn't always been the way, but when folks produce recommendations, when subcommittees produce recommendations, we get a draft on the website. And then we can send it out to the folks on the email chain. So there can be as many eyes on it as possible. So community has ample time to look at it and reflect, because before each vote, there's obviously going to be the public comment, and then the public might see something that we all miss. Go ahead, Barb.
Hey, Barb.
Hey, I'm sorry. I needed my other hand over there, which is Amy, to turn on the mic. So you're still coming up with things to put on the agenda, right? Yes? Is that where we're at? I'm going rogue, people. Despite what Gloria and Gloria, as an elder, I really want to get to know you. And we'll do hot cocoa too, with or without Mary Claire and Amy. I want to suggest that, since I'm going to just lay it out here, folks, one of the PCCEP's main work products and jobs, besides hosting town halls and stuff, is to produce recommendations. I am all about easy recommendations and hard recommendations, but I don't like to see easy opportunities for easy recommendations to fly by. And so I'm really wondering if anybody will support me if I suggest putting a recommendation up for a vote at the PCCEP meeting for supporting the wellness program directives that are about to be approved by the chief, hopefully, as they pass the union. Because to me, it's like a give me. It's not a finished product. It's codification isn't the right word, right? But it's the closest thing. Mary Claire, maybe help me out. It's the closest thing.
It's still in
that
draft
the
mode.
Portland police. No, this is about the chief. This is about it actually going into effect on paper, Amy, and whether the PCCEP wants to support, write a simple recommendation that I said last night I was willing to write and support that. But I'm happy to not do that because I'm not going to do extra work.
I think if the Behavioral Health Subcommittee wants time on the agenda to discuss this, I think that's for the steering committee to decide. But like, it's not something to be like voted on, obviously, right now or talked about. But like, space on the agenda is kind of. I think if the Behavioral Health Subcommittee wants time on the agenda to discuss this, then I think that's.
I don't have their support because of what happened last night in the meeting and the timeline.
I think there's a
Or I don't
confusion.
know if I have their
Theo,
support.
we would like to bring that recommendation forward at the general meeting under like what you guys called an action plan area, the section under action plan. And we will explain what we're looking for and just kind of put it out there for public comment.
I also, I appreciate you including me in the conversation, but I also want to make it clear that I'm not a PCCEP member. I'm not a steering committee member. So the agenda is built between you all. So
I thought you were the note taker, putting the bullet points down.
I'm certainly the note taker. So if the steering committee wants this on their agenda, then that is great. Then Celeste and Gloria, I suppose, what do you all think about this?
I'm not comfortable, Theo, voting on anything or recommending anything that doesn't have teeth in it. So I don't see this as a finished product. And it's not me against them or those who agree. It is only right. And that's the way I'm looking at it. You don't send your child to school and not look at the report card when they bring it home at the end of the quarter. I want to know how the child was graded, why they got low marks in certain areas, and what they're going to do to improve it. You ask that, the simplest thing from children. We should not hold anybody, no matter who they are, what position they have, with less accountability.
And Gloria, this is exactly the conversation that needs to happen at the meeting. And I think that'll be so helpful so I'm hearing Barb and Amy want to bring forward some language to be considered. And I think that is going to be important, Gloria, that you can put in your perspective on whether or not this is what the PCCEP should do, and other members will have a chance to vote. I see Barb and Jared.
Is Barb done?
That was an old hand. Go ahead,
Okay,
Jared.
I guess my question is, I'm all for, I hear Gloria disagreeing with the content of the recommendation. I think that's her prerogative. But I do have, a larger concern that this recommendation isn't written. And I hear that you want to vote on it next Tuesday. I appreciate that the committee is active and doing work, but that if it's going to be a recommendation voted on, we have to hear from the public, and they're going to need notice of it. So, I'm not saying it's too late, but the vision of this committee is not that you all have great ideas and we want to see you vote on them, but that you would put something out to the public and then you would get their viewpoint on it. And if this is going to be written tomorrow or even tonight and posted, I thought the meeting happens next Tuesday, right? The big meeting.
Well, maybe
That
I
is
need
feeding
to.
the lack of notice to the public. And as much as I appreciate all of the people on this committee and the regulars who come and support, and we want to hear your views, we want to hear other people's views too. And getting a written recommendation out at least a week in advance, maybe two if you're going to vote on it, that can be helpful. So maybe it's something for January's meeting, unless it's super time sensitive, and there's been exceptions in the past. I want you to keep in mind the notice that the public needs for the recommendations you vote on, because we really want to hear from the public on those. And that's my view.
Did I make a mistake in letting people think I was going to ask for a vote? I want to have an open conversation and bring it forward that that the whole program is being reviewed for consideration. I just don't have the language that y'all have to be able to say properly what I'm trying to say. I don't need a recommendation voted on. I want to bring forward the topic of the
Amy,
behavioral health subcommittee working on this thing.
And Amy, I think that's totally appropriate for your check-in time.
Yes, thank you.
Just say what you're working on, and
yes.
Okay, good. So we don't have
anything
that's going to be voted on.
Recommendation. It was
Great.
Intended for a discussion.
Great, thank you, Amy. And you might want to just queue up a question or two for asking people to respond to, just to help the conversation along when we get there on Tuesday.
Great.
I see Ms. Celeste.
So I'm a little confused, so help me. If I'm hearing it correctly, are we going to solicit public comment, or are we going to tell them we want to do this and then schedule a meeting where they can have time to process and then have public comment? Is it, because I want to make sure I'm getting the chronology of this straight.
What's been happening at meetings, Celeste, is that that proposals will be made, and then the chairs have been calling on PCCEP members for discussion, then opening it up for public comment. You all can decide if you feel that it'd be more appropriate to, introduce it, then have public comment, then have public discussion amongst the members. It feels sometimes like when the discussion between the members happens first, that people already kind of have their minds a little made up. And this is one of the reasons, like, I personally don't think there should be proxies, because I think you should have to hear from the community and incorporate their feedback into how you vote.
So then would we, if we're bringing this forward at this next meeting, would we, instead of having a vote ourselves to give the public enough time to speak, could we not make a decision, but rather just ask the public for their comment?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Absolutely.
I feel like not only an equitable thing, but it's a show of good faith.
what do the other members think? Do you all think that that sounds like a good way to go? I mean, you can decide not to make a decision. I think that's actually what we're talking about now. Amy is talking about in her section of the check-in for the subcommittee. She wants to bring it up and kind of put it out there for some discussion and input. And then that will go back to the subcommittee as it, what they're thinking, and it will make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on.
Yes.
And the program is getting approved, so it's a really appropriate time to bring it up and let everybody know what's happening. So that sounds like a great plan.
Judith, need confirmation real quick. You mentioned check-in section. We should have a separate box for discussion section, so people know we're going to have a discussion about it, rather than just a simple, here's what our subcommittee did at the last meeting. That to me would be the check-in methodology, and the discussion piece would come under another bucket of time, in my opinion.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm taking too much time from everybody else.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So I'm hearing for the agenda, and Claudia was the one who puts our agendas together, that there would be, you'd have, maybe the thing to do is, you have your just check in as saying, we've brought something for discussion that we'll discuss after everyone's made their check-ins. And then you can have some time for discussion on the wellness committee launching. And then there's some time for and Anne is actually wants a discussion. It sounds like nothing's actually coming for a vote this time. It's to have discussions.
Well, this is our first meeting, and this is a good time to set the foundation of how we're going to work, so that people don't think they have to vote on everything every meeting. This is where we get to change the future, is what we do now. That's just my opinion.
And
good point. Jared. Oh, Byron, I'm sorry.
Judith, if we don't have enough public input, how do we move forward? Because I know on our behavioral health subcommittee, me and Barb are pretty much the only two, so it's hard to get feedback from the community. So is it a advertising thing? Do we need to put things on TV, on the radio? How do we get more people to come in to get more input from the community? And how do we move forward with that?
Yeah, Theo has some thoughts on that.
I'm sorry.
And we're past time, just so you know.
That's really the question of the hour. We certainly have ads out in newspaper outlets. We do the social media thing. Claudia and I and Judith, we have conversations. We go to colleges and all around town to try to get people involved, just to show up to meetings, see if it's right for them. Ultimately, we're trying to get to recruit people, but we just want people to show up first and see what they think and see if they want to get involved. Sometimes they come, sometimes they don't. But that's really the question of the hour. Like, we want folks to come. We want folks to hear the good words that you all have to say and to engage in the conversation, or just listen to the conversation, whatever that looks like for them. But we are over time, so Barb, you'll have the last word of the evening. Oh, your hand went down.
Thanks, all right.
Old hand.
Okay.
If you're interested in publicizing this, somebody give me a call. We'll put my phone number in it, whether it's staff or the subcommittee chair. We could talk about this on the radio. And that's one way to start getting some traction and getting it out to the public. So 7380. So, figure out who wants to do it.
There's a wonderful.
That's great, Celeste. And we can also just put out that we're actively recruiting.
Yeah.
Actively recruiting. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, Theo, if you want to write some basic copy, just some bullet points about what you would say about number one, recruiting, and then number two, about the meeting, I can make a promo and I can have that run on the air.
Wonderful, Celeste.
Okay.
So much.
Okay.
Good. Well, thank you all very much for a wonderful meeting. It's good to see you all. I hope you all have a wonderful night.
Did we,
Take
Theo,
care.
do we
Yes.
have a completed agenda?
Yeah, we can do it, and if it runs, usually conversations, if there's good public input, they can run as long as we let them run. But we don't always need to go the full 3 hours. If it ends short, then it ends short, and that's okay.
And then do we have a section on there for the public to like bring forward subject matter for future? Like asking the public what would they like to hear about? We need maybe to broad out a box that asks the community, what would you like us to focus on, you know, within this content, within this framework of what we got?
We don't
I
have
don't
a
know.
box for that right now for like new business, but we can.
Like new
We can
business.
add that.
Yeah, new business. Yeah, yeah.
That sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Well, have a good night, all.
Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
One last